So what if I told you that Kansas City was once one of the most corrupt cities in the United States, and that notorious mobsters once walked our streets, and that people believed that secret underground tunnels still exist beneath part of our downtown? And what if I told you that there was one political boss that controlled pretty much everything that happened here in Kansas City? Well, most people know that Kansas City is known for barbecue. I mean, in fact, we are known for barbecue worldwide. We're known for, of course, our Chiefs. We're also known for jazz, but beyond all of that, beyond all of the things that we are really known about, the history of Kansas City is sometimes stranger than fiction. Today, we're uncovering 5 fascinating facts, or sometimes shocking myths, if you will. They're not really myths, they're pretty much all true with some stories. How's that? These are stories that helped shape Kansas City into what we know today, and you probably know of somebody who knows something about the history of what I'm going to talk about today. Some of these pieces of information or stories are completely true, and then some of them are still debated. But all of them and all of the things that I'm going to talk about are part of Kansas City's incredible story. So let's dive in. So this first segment is going to talk about the man who ran Kansas City. His name is Tom Pendergast. So if you've lived around Kansas City at all for very long, you have probably heard or come across the name Tom Pendergast. Many people don't realize just how much power this man had. In the 1920s and the 30s, Pendergast was known in our city. He wasn't actually a mayor, though. He didn't even hold the state's highest office. Yet many historians believe that, and they say that he controlled nearly every single important political decision in Kansas City. So if you needed a city job, go to Tom Pendergast. If you needed a governmental contract, he was involved. If you were running for office, he was the one that had to approve you. Many believe that you actually needed his approval to get anywhere at all in your career. His political machine really was what they called it. It became one of the most powerful in America. And interestingly enough, while it was corrupt and there was corruption that surrounded his whole entire organization, from all the stories that are out there, many residents actually appreciated him because he kept people employed during the Great Depression. There were construction projects that still continued on. There were roads that were being built. There were buildings that were going up. There were families that found work when jobs were super hard to come by. And it created this complicated legacy within our city. So to some, Tom Pendergast was corrupt. And then to others, he was the man that kept Kansas City alive during that whole time in history where difficult times just really met every single family almost. Now, there was one person whose career greatly benefited from Tom Pendergast, and that young county judge was named Harry Truman. Yep, you got that right. Our future, or the future president of the United States in that time. So although Truman eventually, he established his own legacy and he established his kind of own story, historians widely acknowledge that Pendergast was the person who helped launch his political career. So Kansas City's fingerprints reached all the way to the White House. And they reached my film as well. As if you've followed along at all, or if you're a new follower, you know that I'm also in the entertainment industry. And back several years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I produced a short film called Awaken. And one of the friends that I had who lived in town here for a while, she lived in this home, and we used her home to film this little short film. And it was really interesting to hear about the history of this property because she knew, and through stories around the community discovered as well that this home actually was connected to Tom Pendergast. And the history is still in speculation as to what he used this house for, but we believe that this home was used for his side elite meetings. And we don't know all the other stuff that occurred in this home, but there was an underground spring. And there was this part of the house that was cemented off. We couldn't even get to this other portion of the home, but we knew that it was there. And so we have no idea what happened in that room, but it created some interesting dialogue as well. So if you ever want to see that short film, it's interesting as far as the dynamics of how we use it. So Tom Pendergast's fingerprints made it all the way to the White House and made it into one of the films that I did. So the second interesting part about Kansas City is all of the conversation around underground tunnels. And there's this question that says, is there really this history? Do we really know whether or not there were underground tunnels? Because you've probably heard people talking about these secret underground tunnels that are connected to the downtown part of our Kansas City. So, are they real? The answer is sort of. Many of the older buildings that are in Kansas City throughout downtown were connected by underground passageways. And some of these passageways allowed workers to move back and forth between the buildings when they were doing construction. And then other passageways carried utilities. And then some connected the basements to each other. And during the Prohibition, there were stories that spread that there were tunnels that helped transport alcohol even while trying to avoid the authorities. Now, were all of these stories true? Not necessarily. Some of these stories have obviously been exaggerated. You guys know that over time that happens, but documentation about underground corridors absolutely exists regarding the downtown Kansas City area. Now, today, some of those underground corridors, if you will, remain sealed. And then when there's historical tours that happen in Kansas City, there are some that actually open up. This is one of those pieces of history that continues to fuel Kansas City's mystery and what happened in our world of how we became Kansas City and what was happening while it was being developed. Okay, section number 3 is all about Kansas City and the mob. If you've ever watched any old mafia movies, then Kansas City, hands down, would have its own chapter. There was organized crime and it became deeply connected to gambling, became connected to liquor distribution, and then later casinos. And one of the most famous names associated with Kansas City's mob history is a man by the name of Nick Civella. Now, I could be pronouncing it wrong. It could be Civella, but for this video purpose, we're gonna call it Civella. Organized crime families, they operated for decades. There was illegal gambling, there was labor influence, there was political connections that drove a lot of what happened in Kansas City. And then federal investigations eventually dismantled a lot of the activity, or most of the activity. But there are remnants of this history that remain around. There's certain buildings, there's certain neighborhoods, there's even restaurants that have some kind of connection to the mob in the early 1900s. And there's even local legends that still reference those fascinating years when that was around. Today, it's part of Kansas City's historical identity, weirdly enough. And I will say this, that this is not something that is celebrated, but it's certainly remembered. And we know that it was in Kansas City, but it's not something that necessarily we tout about and we, celebrate, like I said. There were known hangouts and there were known operations. And just to name a few, there's a location called The Trap. It's a North View Social Club is what it was also called. It's located near 5th Street and Troost Avenue and in the Columbus Park or Rivermark area. And this card room, if you will, and also social club. It was an operational base where the FBI famously wiretapped Civella. And when this happened, they wiretapped him and got his illegal gambling activities on record. Then there's the Villa Capri Pizzeria. It's located at 2609 Independence Avenue. And this raised restaurant and building, it was secretly bugged by the FBI in the late 1970s. And guys, that's not very long ago, in the 1970s, literally like 40-ish years ago. And during that recording, the Civella family members discussed this multi-million-dollar scam from the Las Vegas casinos. They call it skimming. And they wiretapped it, and that restaurant is where it all happened. Then there's 1423 Baltimore Avenue. This 50s location of the downtown Bridge Club, it was known actually for a mob hotspot that was operated by Civella. Then there's the Tallman's Grill. And now the Tallman's Grill is this popular jazz club. It's called the Phoenix, and it's located at 8th and Central. The Tallman's Grill was a place to eat if you were a mobster in the 1930s and 1950s. And it was also where the mobsters would go and they would get all of their race results and wheel and deal, I guess. Now, when it comes to the residential part of Kansas City, you know that I can't do a video without talking about the houses, right? Well, there was the Marlowe house. This resident in Kansas City is where high-level mob meetings actually took place, including a 1978 conference between Civella family crime members and the Las Vegas casino executives that was intercepted by authorities. And then there's actually the Civella residence. Nick Civella's personal home was located in Kansas City in a neighborhood that was actually considered or collectively named as a mob neighborhood. And when locals noted that this mob neighborhood existed, they actually were saying that Nick's home had an underground tunnel that connected to his brother Carl, who lived right across the street. Now, if you're interested in local history of Kansas City and the mob, you will have to go outside of Kansas City because we don't have a mob museum here, but there is actually a mob museum that is called the Mob Museum. It's the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement. And I believe it is located in Las Vegas or Chicago. I can't remember. Now, section number 4, it's all about our jazz history. Now, here's something really ironic about our jazz history. It's while the Prohibition shut down nightlife pretty much across most of America, the wide open Pendergast era, it's how he kind of ran the city. It's this wide open area. He was the political boss, remember? Well, he ran Kansas City with this really loose hand. He refused to enforce federal alcohol laws that were set in place. He transformed the city into this, what they call Paris of the Plains. And what that meant was that Kansas City actually became one of the hottest, literally hottest entertainment cities in the country. And you're probably asking, why was that? I mean, in the Prohibition, they were shutting down the cities, and yet Kansas City was totally different because there was no enforcement. Enforcement was not a priority here. Enforcement was, like I said, this loose hand. I mean, clubs would stay open till wee hours of the night. Music continued on the streets till wee hours of the night. And visitors would hear about it and they would pour into the city, bringing a lot of people here to visit. And as a result, Kansas City became one of America's jazz capitals. There were legendary musicians that came here and they built this unforgettable music scene. And some historians even credit the city's relaxed atmosphere from that era during that time, which allowed all of the jazz musicians to really develop their voice in this unique way. And today, you can even still experience that legacy. There's a place called 18th and Vine. Some of it is shut down, some of it needs to be rehabbed, but there's still era that it kind of exists in the 18th and Vine district. And that legacy, that jazz legacy of Kansas City, is still in existence. There's also the Jazz Museum that's here, and there's just a celebration of artists that helped define the story of Kansas City when it comes to jazz. It's fascinating that one of Kansas City's greatest cultural treasures with the jazz fingerprint, it grew and kind of created this story of Kansas City during one of the most difficult times in American history with the Great Depression and the Prohibition. It's just fascinating how in one swoop of how Tom Pendergast ran the city, it actually created a story. 12th Street and 18th and Vine, it literally at that time it buzzed with hundreds of nightclubs. There were dance halls, and there were even speakeasies that were pretty popular during that time. In fact, some of those speakeasies are still in existence today. There's one downtown that's in the basement of one of the hotels. And then there's also another speakeasy in Lee Summit. But jobs and alcohol, it attracted hundreds and hundreds of displaced musicians and Midwest migrants, if you will, to the area. And then of course there was nonstop employment for these performers, and it just kept the clubs packed and the dance floors alive, and it was just a part of our city that people back then really enjoyed, I guess. And so the unique Kansas City, that unique sound, if you will, it's really unlike any jazz that you will hear back. It just is like this New Orleans jazz, but yet the Kansas City style that plugged it in. And Kansas City's relaxed way of doing music, it was just this unhurried rhythm that we are known for. And how did that happen? Well, there was just these all-night jam sessions that really just fostered some of that cutthroat musical atmosphere where there would be duets going on, and it would force the musicians to sharpen their improvisational skills, which is all about jazz, right? I mean, there were band leaders like Benny Moten and Count Basie, and they just exported their driving rhythm section style to the rest of the world after that. There were legends that were birthed here in Kansas City, and also they birthed the bebop. The city served as really this primary training ground for all of the jazz musicians that came. And Count Basie is known in some of our courses at school even. When I went to college at University of Kansas, I actually took a jazz history class, and Count Basie was in that. He took the helm of Kansas City's sound, and then he carried it then after that to national radio and then to Carnegie Hall. And so there were so many jazz musicians that helped bring Kansas City alive. And then there was Big Joe Turner. He had this urban blues feel to it that really laid the foundational groundwork for the early rock and roll that came about later. Then there was Charlie Bird Parker. He had this lightning fast virtuosity in the local alleyways, and when you would see him, he had a great vibe about him from what I've read and heard, which also helped with that bebop movement. The cultural importance of the 18th and Vine Historic District, it's celebrated today, even still, through institutions like the American Jazz Museum. Even this museum preserves some of the instruments and artifacts of that local time frame. And some of the schools, like I said, do have part of their curriculum to cover the jazz history. It's definitely something that if you are into jazz or you're into history and cultural parts of our history, this will be something to definitely check out. All right, so now we're going to talk about those underground limestone caves beneath Kansas City. Okay, this is different than the tunnels. This surprises almost everyone when they hear about this, but Kansas City sits on this enormous limestone formation, and it just, well, and I say that, I should say it plural, because it's not just one formation, it's like all kinds of these limestone formations. And for decades, what happened was these companies would mine out the limestones, and they would take that and then leave behind what they mined out. And so when they left behind the holes and just the hollowness of these limestones, it became something extraordinary. There's this underground network of man-made caverns that stretch literally for miles. Today, many of those underground spaces, they're used for things like warehouses, data storage areas, archives, and then there's even some that rent out some of the caverns and use it for their own businesses. So you can lease out some of these caverns. Now, the temperatures in these caverns are really nice. They stay naturally about 65 to 70 degrees. So it makes it a very attractive place to have a business. It stays that way all year round, even in the heat of the summer or in the freezing cold of the winter. And some people don't even realize that millions of square feet of commercial space exist beneath the surface of the Kansas City area. And it's really crazy because this is really the largest underground business complexes in the world. And while most people will drive right past it without even realizing it, that this is below, these caverns have become a practical solution for a lot of things: storage, logistics, and even secure record keeping. This is just one other example of how Kansas City has done things differently than the rest of America. Now, one of the things that is true is that Kansas City has Subtropolis. Now, Subtropolis is the world's largest underground business complex. This massive 55 million square foot man-made cavern, it maintains, again, like I said, this natural temperature, and it is the world's largest. And there's some questions that I'm going to answer for you. So you might be asking, well, can the public actually go down into Subtropolis and view it? Well, yes. The public can drive through Subtropolis. It's in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, it is a private industrial business park, but there's no security gates that I'm aware of that block the main entrance. And so visitors can actually drive through it and take a look around. There is a lighted, paved limestone tunnel through there. And as long as you're in there during regular business hours, you can drive through there. Now, there's a couple of things that you will want to know if you decide to drive through there. Like I said, it is a private commercial space, and there are active commercial tenants that are in this space. There's also delivery trucks that are in and out, and there are some parts of it that have security patrols in it. I'm not sure where, but I don't believe that there's any in the gate of it all. Now, one thing to note is that there is no cell service. So if you get lost down there, you have no GPS and you have no way of calling anybody out. So don't get lost. I mean, it is easy to turn around, but it kind of functions like this big, huge, giant maze. And the grid tunnels are about 40 feet wide. So it really is kind of easy to get disoriented. If you wander through there and drive through there, it is easy to get disoriented. I've been down in one of the underground business tunnels once, and I didn't go very far in because I used to get freaked out that I was going to get lost. But if you do get brave and you want to try going down in one of these tunnels, just make sure that you obey the traffic laws, because there is commercial driving going on. There's commercial vehicles. And then also too, there are some businesses rent out some of that space and they're not open to the public. It's not like you can shop down there at a store. That's not it. There's these businesses that rent those spaces. And so if you're trying to go into a bay, make sure that you aren't going to be trespassing or don't disrupt their business operation. Now there's also the downtown underground, and that actually has some space. I just saw on their website that you can go and lease a space if you want, but that's the downtown underground. And then there's also some on the east side of Kansas City as well. So I say all of this to say that Kansas City is so much more than barbecue and football. We have an enormous, rich history behind every neighborhood, behind every historic building, behind every downtown street. There's a story. You never know what that story is about. Some of them could be really inspiring, and some of them could be a little mysterious, and some of them could be kind of sad. And some of them remind us that history is rarely simple. And this is one of the reasons why I love Kansas City so much. It's because every time I turn around, there's something new to learn and something rich to discover. Whether you are a lifelong resident here of Kansas City or you're thinking about moving to the area, understanding some of these stories could be key to helping you make a decision as to whether you're going to live in the suburbs or whether you want to live near some of these places. And I know that understanding some of these shocking things or taking a deep dive into the history could actually help you appreciate our city even that much more. So I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced any of these stories that I have mentioned? And if you have, what did you discover about it? And is there anything else that I missed? I only mentioned 5. But of course, there's probably a whole lot more that I missed. So if you have something that you want to share, be sure and put it in the comments. I know that a lot of people would love to read about it, especially if there's any Kansas City legends or historical mysteries that you want to share in the comments. I'd love to hear about them too. And if you enjoy learning about Kansas City, whether that's home tours or just what's happening in the area or market updates, be sure and subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up. And also too, I'm a local real estate agent and I help people just like you buy, sell, relocate, and invest. So be sure and reach out. I have a Calendly link below, and if you click on that link, it goes right to my calendar, and I would love to set up a consultation with you. So thanks so much, and as always, to buy or sell, call Anita Cordell, #AnitaHome, and I look forward to helping you and seeing you in my next video.